And we're back. Welcome to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. I'm your humble host, Jon Dayton. Gathered tonight is a significant portion of the original panel. I've got your regular co-host, Anth Kosobucki, here.
Hey there.
I've got Gordon Wood returning once again, 2 weeks in a row.
Howdy.
And returning from his long absence through a protracted engagement, planning, wedding, honeymooning, and recovery session, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to our studio, Mr. Karl Maciag.
I'm taking my socks off for this one.
Sweet. I'm going to keep mine on just because I want to stay conscious. All right, we got a little bit of housekeeping to do, and then we're eventually going to talk live mixing stuff tonight. So hold on to your britches for that if that's of interest to you. First thing is, if we haven't sort of stated our purpose in life here recently, so I just wanted to kind of lay that out. We're in the blog and the podcast. We're not really here to lay out the final word or write the book on anything. The idea is sort of just to float ideas out there, encourage thought processes, encourage discussion. And there's a few different things that we've been trying lately to encourage that, and some of them are working. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Excuse me. Sorry, I looked at my notes. I had to shift from talking to I could never be a preacher. I can't. Well, anyway, one of the things we've been doing lately, I guess I'll jump right into the meat of it, is I did a couple mini podcasts that were less than 10 minutes long. I had run across something cool in the studio when I was mixing some stuff down, saved a copy of the project, broke it down, did a little bit of voiceover with it, and put it out there. And the first one was fairly well received. I think it got, 100 hits or so on the blog, and maybe 40 or so people clicked through to listen to it. The most recent one that I did was about building up a choir out of a single voice, not a single track. We had the same person sing about 12 different takes of each passage. Put together a little 8-minute mini podcast about that, put it up on the blog, and I shared that one on Reddit, which it only got about 40 upvotes, but it got us 800 hits on the website.
You didn't put a cat in it.
There's not, no.
That's why.
I mean, my cats were around.
Every cat that you put in adds another 0 to your upvotes on Reddit.
My cats were around. I was pausing when they would jump on the laptop. And
400,000 hits was so close.
Yeah, you got to leave the cats in then.
But anyway, I think we finally hit on something. So both of those things generated more interest than almost anything else we've done. So in the interest of doing what people want, we're going to try and all of us, at least Anthony and I anyway, if anybody else is feeling their oats and wants to cough up a mini podcast about whatever, building road cases, selecting amps, mixing live, driving with a trailer on, whatever.
Hoping that the trailer stays on.
Gold bond.
We're gonna pull together a few of those because we were very honored that that many people were interested in that. The other thing I floated out on Reddit was last week we talked about, and I didn't have a chance to brief Karl on this. Did you read the post about Max D?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I got a lot to say.
All right, well, you can jump. Oh, maybe you think what everybody else thought. Anthony and I were both kind of blown away by it, taking with a grain of salt that it's kind of new technology and not fully developed yet. But I posted that one over our Reddit. It got downvoted to oblivion, and I think what the nail in the coffin for that was somebody like the first commenter was just like, nope, it's a scam. So it didn't have a prayer after that. Like. I think that might be the guy who downvotes everything I post too. I always get one downvote and the rest are upvotes. I think it's that guy. But whatever, I don't hold grudges. So anyway, what did you think about Max D? Just to catch everybody else up, it's this new technology that preserves dynamic range, cures some phasing ails, and basically preserves dynamics and stereo width in low bitrate MP3s, and will stay with them throughout multiple iterations, like multiple compressions, say, for instance, going through like a chain of broadcasts, from the producer through distribution, through satellite uplinks and affiliates and down to your cable box, not your TV. It's supposed to preserve more of the originally produced width and depth than...
I think it almost adds some width and depth. Like, I went through and listened to some stuff, and it almost sounds too hard panned.
Right. Well, that's why I think some people might think it's a scam. Eventually, like, you'll have access to this stuff, and you'll be able to access the controls. The demo ones, I think on purpose, they kind of put everything, dimed out all the controls and pulled the knobs off. Like, all right, we'll show them. but I think eventually you'll be able to get your hands on the controls and have it be as much or as little as you want. And all right, so over to you, Carl. What do you think about Max D?
Well, I like the idea behind it, absolutely, wholeheartedly. The question I have is I want to know a little bit more about how it works. So we're not creating, it's not a new file format. They're claiming that they are better restoring MP3s is what I gather. Mm-hmm. So I guess you got compression. Is this just some kind of fancy expansion, for lack of a better term?
Probably.
So,
but the better the algorithms, I think, the more intelligent things get.
So I guess, okay, I kind of dig that thought to do it that way. It was funny when you go to their website, they have that thing, I think they had a clip about CSNBC having a story about it. And the first thing the woman says is, artists like Neil Young say MP3s destroyed music. And I happened to just finish reading the book that he released this year. Did you guys talk about it?
I've heard about it. No.
Okay. Well, he's been working with some developers, software guys for a long time. It's changed names a couple times.
I think now it's Pono, and it's like yellow and triangular, the device.
So it's
the name's right, at least.
It's a lossless format. And I tend to subscribe to that school of thought a little bit more. And here's the reason. One, looking through the Max D, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Looking through that website, I'm still confused on how it all works. I'm very confused on how it all works.
It's magic math.
You have to keep watching the video and hope that it makes sense subliminally somehow.
The whole thing with TV and games and all this other stuff. It's just like, as a consumer, I don't want to bother with any of that, But when it comes to music, if I have to pay a little extra for a file format that's pure, I think the original name of it was called like Pure Tone or something like that, and I'm like, they're going to get sued.
I've only heard of it since it's been Pono.
Yeah, originally I think it was called Pure Tone, and there was a copyright on the name already or something. But the big thing is getting the retailers to buy in, getting Apple to buy into that, getting Amazon to buy into that. And the problem that he was saying they were having in the book is investors are kind of scared of those retailers, which I don't think they should be. I think Apple and Amazon should recognize that, all right, look, I know that they're not going to sell tens of millions of these files. Maroon 5 comes out with their next CD, and you have this new file format. Not everybody's going to buy that.
No, because nobody's going to care. More, right. There's only a few people that I would think more intense, like when you get to a more in-depth musical performance, like something like a Tool or like a Nine Inch Nails would benefit from something with that kind of loss.
Well, I think all the music is going to benefit from it, but I don't want to look at it from that angle. I want to look at it as which consumers are going to buy it. That's the bottom line. Because even, there might be the stereotype that, your Tool fan or your Dream Theater fan or somebody like that is going to be more in tune with what quality audio is. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to care enough to spend that money for whatever. But I'm probably going to spend that extra money no matter what it is. Whether it's, the Pink Floyd discography or, whatever it is that my 8-year-old son is listening to now. If I can have that better format, I'm going to spend the extra money for it. It's a priority for
Run
me.
DMC now?
I have no idea what's going on.
Okay, just had to pause there to take care of a little church business. And now we're back. We're going to turn it back over to Carl, who's going to finish up where we left off on Pono.
Right. So, the Pono thing, like, you know what you're getting. You're getting the best quality audio, as close to the master tapes in a digital format that you're going to get. I think that's, if we want to kind of guarantee that people are getting quality audio, then let's give them that. Apple, Amazon, whoever is making the player for crying out loud, make it work with yours. You know, like I'll go buy a new iPod if I know it's going to work with, you know, whatever. Right. Or I don't want to ditch iTunes just because I want to have this new file format.
Especially when you've got close to a few hundred gigs of stuff in there.
Right. You know, I was looking at my library today, and I mean, I guess it's modest compared to other people's, but, you know, still it's like 35 gigs of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, you know, really to convert it to the new file format or something like that, I'm probably not going to do it with everything, so I know I don't listen to everything in the library, but it would be cool. But bringing that back into this software solution to kind of expand it digitally or whatever, I hate the idea of giving consumers the control of that. Because now it's just like, okay, in a sense, let's make the consumer a mastering engineer and let them really kind of mess around with how the artist is trying to have themselves come on. Now, and I don't know how much control there is there, but it's like, well, we know that the people compressing it are doing a really bad job. A consumer is going to know how to uncompress it well enough, and I hate to, you know, be really down on it in that aspect, but it's kind of like, why? I just don't understand why people are going to want to go through the trouble.
Well, I think it's not. I might be the only one in the room who listened to the Audio Nowcast interview with the creators. And one thing will become immediately certain to you is that they're definitely brainiacs and not PR reps, hence their website and hence the kind of I don't want to say cryptic, but like sort of difficult to fathom idea is. Now, they said at one point in that interview that you can upload anything. Say, you know, your Beatles rips from your iTunes library. And I think that was more to demonstrate that it's going to be an open process, not necessarily that everybody's going to run out and pay 50 cents a pop to process their whole iTunes library, because nobody's going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And, you know, I'm pretty hot to try. Like, I really like the concept. I think what it's more aimed at is people who make their own music, and not that they're necessarily, well, no, let's face it, if you're an amateur and you're making your own music, you're pretty much murdering it, but it gives you an easily accessible mastering tool that doesn't take a lot of brain power to operate, and for 50 cents a pop, for $5 or $6, you can put some protection on your music, whatever you're putting out. And I think it's sort of more aimed at that crowd, like people who are making their own music, and then anyway, I'm not sure about if they're expecting it to be like.
I think I overlooked that a little bit. Okay. I remember reading that, and maybe that just didn't click.
It's a really multifaceted thing, mm-hmm. And I'm not sure. You know, like it's not available yet as a thing, so you can't tell. Like, they were sort of just talking about getting this stuff ready for the website, and it sounded like there might even be multiple levels. So, like, I'm wondering if for 20 cents a pop or 10 cents a pop, you get the auto setting if you really are going to process your iTunes library. Or, you know, maybe you just got some stuff that you ripped back when hard drives were smaller and MP3s were even skinnier. You don't have the CDs anymore. You'd like to clean up what you got. Sure, 10 cents a pop. I might do that to a couple CDs that I don't have anymore. Level 2 might be, you know, a little bit more control, like the old DVX compressors with the more slider. And then on up to, I would assume, you know, full control over, you know, the width, the compansion, expansion, phasing, whatever all it's doing in there. And they didn't dwell on that very long, but it sounded like there were going to be multiple levels of it for different types of consumers getting into it. Okay, I think we beat that horse to death.
I'm kind of like a side note on digital audio. I'd like to thank Spotify for auto-selecting some sort of sound processing on the app on my phone, so that whenever I used it in a car, I thought the cable I had was bad because the center channel of audio was basically gone. Until I dug in a couple menus and saw that there was some reverberation processing that made all the vocals disappear, thanks to all the geniuses that made that happen.
You got the karaoke app. Is what you
right?
got.
Yeah,
that's what happened. They wanted you
money for that.
to be the vocalist.
Yeah. I was
it's an interactive experience.
Playing a song for Paulie in the van, and he's like, "This sounds terrible." I'm like, "Yeah, but it sounds awesome on headphones," because I was listening to it on my computer at work on headphones. I'm like, it just must be a weird mix. And then we went to another track, and it was the same thing. And
was it just out of the headphone jack or on the 30 pin on the bottom?
Out of the headphone jack, but the Spotify, like, why does Spotify even have sound EQ adjustments, anything at all? Don't bother. Why pay somebody to do the coding? Because you're just going to screw it up.
Yeah, and they did. All right, well, to lay that one to rest.
I've never had that problem. I use it all the time. I want to find it and do it. Just
your ears aren't that tuned yet.
Oh, slam.
Want to put a little cold water on that burn. Well, anyway, to wrap this up, I, for one, am kind of interested in it because despite making music for a living in the studio and live, I'm a consumer just like everybody else. All my MP3s are low bit rate. I do all my listening in the car, so it's like, all right, 2 out of 3 strikes. Like, I don't know what the third strike even is. Like, I'm pretty much at the bottom of the barrel because that's the time I have for recreational listening, and that's the music that I have. I either rip stuff into iTunes or I bought it for $1 on iTunes because for my consumption of music, I'm not going out to spend $14 to $20 for a plastic disc that I don't even want all of. Like, I'm willing to take a hit on quality to just get the one song that I want from some 80s band or something like that. Because I really, I want to hear the hook and the groove a little bit, and then by that time I'm at work and it's time to sit in front of some nice monitors and get some work done. But anyway, I like the idea of something that can kind of quell the ravages of MP3 conversion. I don't know if I'd be interested to see if you could feed a high bitrate master into it and get a better low bitrate MP3 out of it, or if you have to convert to low bitrate MP3 and then do stuff to it. But anyway, I like the concept. I like it that cheap music could sound, even if it was just incrementally better, I would like that. So I'm for it. Moving on. I had a pretty nice experience with one of the cats that works for me. High school kid named Chachi. He's been on a couple of times, written a couple posts for us.
John, he's out of high school now. Come on, give him some credit.
Yeah, but, I don't know. He's half my age.
These kids, these whippersnappers.
Anyway, he helps me out. He has been helping me out on theater productions for quite a while, and got his wings recently to the point where I can go load a show in with him, patch everything up, because he's pretty much helpless when it comes to plugging stuff in.
Oh, he's real good at plugging it in backwards. So.
But,
boy.
He does have a pretty good ear, and he mixed The Sound of Music. They had a very good cast in this community theater. It's about a 900-seat odd, and he mixed it to a T. So I was like, congratulations, son, you got your wings. And it was just interesting to watch him throughout the week. We got him a Personas, and after a day of mixing on that, he's like, I want the Allen back. And so I got to questioning him as to why. He's like, well, it's noisy. So I went in and I showed him how his gain structure was a little bit upside down. I said, all right, it's worth it to know that you can do this and not have to give up dynamics on every channel and graphs on all the ins and outs and all that stuff, just so that you can have a little bit better sounding pre's. But it eventually sunk in. I had to scold him twice more. He's like, the hum's back. I'm like, let me guess. All your trims are 5 dB higher than when I left, and your subs are down 5 dB.
Unity is your friend.
Yeah, so I had to back him out of that twice this week. But he's really getting to the point now. It doesn't really matter what it is, but he's finally to the point where he can hear what his gear is actually doing.
You should have given him a Mackie as soon as he talked about hum and hiss.
Lord knows I got plenty of them laying around.
I wish there was a way that you could, because you can drive that thing from your iPhone if it had flying faders, so you could remote it. So every time he said that, you just hit a preset button and it all flies back to where it was when he left.
Well, you actually could probably do that off the iPad.
Yeah. Oh, you can if you use an aux bus for your main outs. Like if you feed the mains from an aux bus, you can use the app, the iPhone app.
Yeah, the iPhone one.
If you have the iPad and a laptop, you can mix the whole thing remotely. But yeah, that's the kids. If you didn't know that, the poor man's solution to mixing remotely on a Personas is to connect the Personas to the laptop, connect by Wi-Fi, take your iPhone out, and then in a monitor mix, drive your main mix. Well, anyway, the thing that I really wanted to dwell on was him getting to the point where he was finally able to hear well enough that he wasn't just hearing the performance, he was hearing it through his gear and becoming keenly aware of the limitations of the gear, and then wanting to start to make choices about, all right, I don't like this gear for this reason, I want to switch to this gear, weigh the pros and cons, and move on to that. So,
so what you're saying is he's going to be screaming for Avalon next year?
I don't know.
He can't have mine. So
not mine either.
I'll treat. Can we get your Joe Meek again?
You can have one channel of it.
Oh my God, you're going to split it in two? Well, I remember, I mean, we're in a church, but that's getting a little graphic there.
Whoever loves it more will will decide to spare it.
Hey, you can keep it.
That was easy.
I think for me, I began to notice the limitations. You know, my first couple house gigs were various speakers, but all with, you know, a VLZ console, whatever it happened to be. You know, that was the constant, you know, processing a little different, but, you know, the constant was always the desk. And, you know, when I was cutting my teeth, the one house gig I had was, you know, in the same building as another venue, and that guy had a Soundcraft Series 2. And, you know, it was only after my first couple times driving on that Soundcraft Series 2, I was like, oh.
Yeah,
that's how a sweepable EQ is supposed to work.
Yeah.
This is what you can do when you have two sweeps.
Thank you, British people.
That was exactly my experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, cool. You know, I know the difference now, and, you know, your ear, I think, becomes aware of it when your brain realizes what the equipment can do. You know, I think it kind of goes hand in hand.
When you realize that you hit the wall, like you use that single sweep mid, and your brain hears something else you want to fix,
right?
And there's not another knob to turn,
right? But that's not going to happen until you know how to use the one sweep.
Exactly.
Because if you don't know how to use the one sweep, what's the point in giving you 4-band parametric?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a 4-band on a Yamaha. It's not really that useful.
It's not British.
Anth and I were looking at console channel strips online, seeing if we could find like some old Midas or Soundcraft channel strips to use in this, you know, build them into a rack to use in the studio. And we kept running across.
They've got some Neve stuff, I know that.
We found a couple of, guy in Canada's got some 400B strips that are already 19 inches. So like the hard part's done.
Yeah.
Come up with a power supply. But there was in abundance was like Yamaha strips, just left, right, and center. Like, oh boy, yeah. Give me some of that.
In honor, have one of those around for the noobs.
To kick or to hold the door open, or what?
We could just take a strip of 8 out of mine.
What we could have given you.
Right.
Anyway.
We don't use all of the 56 channels, so we could just take the last 8 out, chop off the faders, and stuff them in a rack.
Want to do it and see if anybody notices? We'll just park the knob caps on there.
Yeah, actually, have you hooked up the capacitors, the compressor yet?
Let's do that. No, I haven't.
I think consoles and speakers are one thing. I think the most immediate place where you can hear that difference between, you know, what you have and what could be better is, microphones.
Yeah.
You know, again, the house gigs I had, I mean, it was, you know, the 10-year-old D112 that was kicking around some rental shop for 10 years before it ended up at the venue that you're at, and it's been there for 10 years, and God knows what it's been in front of and dropped from and whatever. You know, I remember
here when I told that story, I saw somebody that posted online. They're like, went to a gig with a D112 in my back seat, and I came back and someone smashed my window and put another one in there.
I remember
floor time use only.
You know, a band I mixed all the time at one of the house shows. You know, it was like the second show I had a Beta 91 for, you know, and it was like the first show I didn't have a D112 on the kick. And I mean, just everybody noticed immediately. And, you know, it's not like I EQ'd it different. The system was set up exactly the same. It was just, oh, okay, it's a better mic in a better spot, you know, and, you know, I guess if, well, I don't know, this is, and this is probably a tangent too, but, you know, if I'm going to give advice to somebody on where to start improving their gear, I might say start with your microphones, but that's a conversation for maybe another day.
That's the most portable, because I know you, as long as I've known you, have brought your own mic box to pretty much wherever you've gone.
Right. I've never owned a console, a power amp, speakers, nothing.
Exactly.
Microphones.
But that's like the one thing you can almost always control if you've got that stuff. Like,
even if you're just using 58s, if you're using your 58s
you know,
that haven't been used as like door stops and hammers and
that's actually why I bought a 58 because I needed a hammer.
Yeah. Hammering to go. This is what I'm not going to give you because I don't want you to sound like this.
Mics are also a good place to start without turning this into the mic show, although it could easily go there. It's pretty easy to borrow mics, like even stores. Like if you get a little bit of a rep going with maybe not Guitar Center, but if there's a smaller outlet around, that was how I got turned on to the SM86s that most of us are talking on tonight. Was I went in to buy 87s and Zip behind the counter, reached behind him, fished around, dug out an 86 and said, try one of these. And he just sent me out the door with it. And I came back a week later and bought 3 new ones. Actually, I don't think I even returned it. I called him up the next day.
I need 2 more.
You're not getting this? So ding my card, order 2 more. Yep. But, you know, if you can get to be friends with another sound guy around or a rental house or somebody like that, it's easy to get your hands on mics, even if you have to shell out a couple of bucks. You can try the whole smorgasbord and learn and figure out what you want to actually put in your box.
And then you get a backward situation where, like, I had John's Beta 52 for the last 8 months, and he needed it back last week, and he doesn't need it anymore, so he's trying to give it back to me, and I don't really...
Yeah, I keep trying to return it to him. But what's going to happen is you're going to need it on a Monday, and I'll be home.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Monday's my Shabbat.
Bacon day?
Bacon on Shabbat, yeah.
Even in install world, I find we do that a lot too, and the mic manufacturers are on board with that as well. You know, because people can be picky about it. So, you know, especially church customers. You know, hey, I really want to try Countryman. You know, pastor's been using a lot for 15 years. He doesn't know if he'd be comfortable with it, but you know. Can we give it a shot? Yeah, no problem. Get a demo, send it to him, let him try it for a couple weeks. You know, works good. You know, that's where it starts. You know, if you're not capturing the source well, then, you know, the Neve preamps aren't gonna do much.
Yeah, just understanding gain structure. I mean, I still have revelations on that. Day to day sometimes about how much better I can make a system sound if I really pay more careful attention to how I set up not just my channels but my whole system, you know, like where I build the gain into stuff. Like I can walk in, well, shucks, right here at work I walked into 2 rooms like, oh, it's all hissy and there's all this hum and, you know, I walked in and I, you know, found all the trim knobs dimed out and all the faders at -60
and the crossover's ready to blow up.
Yeah. Just reverse those and suddenly it wasn't really ground loop issues. It was just that all the mic pre's could hear
everything else.
The turbines at Niagara Falls. Like it was like.
Quit picking on my Rode that I brought in.
That was a pretty good mic.
That happened last night. I ended up not playing at a service for the first time in 7 or 8 months.
Because the mix was so far out of whack.
Well, no, it was I wasn't on the list. They brought in. Another group came in and they mixed some of our musicians and they said, you know what, well, you go and mix for tonight. So I went back and mixed. And no matter how much I fix stuff during the week, if I'm not there for service on Sunday, I can't even chalk it all up to the gnomes. Like there's a person behind that mess. And got to sit back there and he actually stayed out of my way the whole night. And it sounded really good. Like I could run it at 95 and it didn't hurt. No one was complaining. They actually said it could be a little bit louder. But all the gains got straightened out. Everything was actually where it was supposed to be. And it didn't sound as much like a Yamaha as it usually does. It's nice. Like, it's going to be screwed tomorrow because I'm not... But at least for one night, it had a good time.
I need to try a little experiment. I found that it's for 2 reasons. One is I run my trims a tiny bit hot because some of my musicians need some of the inputs very hot in their ears. You know, like the keyboard player who's pretty close to the drums just needs a ton of key in his ears. So I got to run those a little hotter to get him what he needs because I'm mixing monitors, mixing IEMs from front of house. So his faders run down a little bit. And after don't know, a month or so, I got so that all the trims were not upside down like I talk about happening other times, but all the trims are just a little bit hotter, and all the faders found this really comfortable spot where, like, my wrist is right on the hand rest on the Midas, and the faders are all just right around -5. So it looks like a mix ought to, where, like, all the faders are pretty much lined up, but then if I bump something for a solo, instead of going from, you know, unity or a bit above to +5, +10, I'm going from 5 under to unity or a little over. So on one count, I'm mixing more in the fat of the fader, where control, you know, you get more motion for less change. So, like, you can, I was going to try and explain that in terms of, like, sports car steering. It's a little looser, a little finer control. But the other thing is, and I haven't done any empirical testing to figure this out, but I wonder if the mixer isn't a little quieter. And if you want to try this on your own, like, pull out that VLZ with all the trims down, set the main at unity, and then just slam all the faders up to max travel.
That's the Mackie man warming up. He's stretching.
He's clearing his throat. Yeah, Carl was being generous there in terms of how much noise you'll get out of that thing. And that's with the trims all the way down. I remember the first time that happened to me, like, all the faders were just still up in the travel position, which, by the way, kids, if you're boxing up a mixer and moving it around night after night, the faders go all the way up before you close the lid. So mine were still all the way up, and the system got powered up, and neither myself nor my assistant had pulled them back down. I fired it up, and I was like, what's
jet engine, what's going on?
Blowing up?
Yeah.
Am I losing my compressors?
Who turned the white noise on?
Like, is an amp going to die? Like, what is, no, it's just 24 shaders.
It was the stupid air knob on the
air mixing. There we go.
I turned those all the way down and pulled them off. So anyway, I need to do some testing on the Midas. I'll get back to you eventually. I actually wrote a post about that 2 weeks ago, said I was going to, and then I didn't do anything.
Never made it.
I've been busy doing stuff. All right. Well, we got roughly half the show left, so I thought we've covered this before, but it's been a little while, so I don't know if any new ideas would sift to the surface. Wanted to talk, and the most recent time we talked about this was about building a mix in the studio and how you go about getting from, all right, what's the track sound like, to there you go, it's done. Now, in the live realm, I think the most common practice is, well, kick drums on channel 1. You start with channel 1. You work until you get to channel whatever the lead vocal's on. And when you're done, you've got yourself a mix, which is actually, if you think about it, really kind of the trickiest way to go about it, because I know I've had it happen to me, and not all that long ago, that you start out thinking you're one place and you get to the end and you're out of gas and there's no lead vocals in the mix. And yet, that's how 99.5% of live sound guys put a mix together. You start with a kick drum and you finish with lead vocals, and somehow mixes turn out sounding like something. So I don't know, we can go down the line, or anybody can just jump up and volunteer about how you go about that and what you do. It's easier for Gordon and myself because we own our own rigs and we mix on those. So, like, I know how much kick drum I can put in a mix and not run out of gas before I get to guitars and vocals. But Carl, how did you go about things when you were clubbing and touring?
Touring, I gambled a lot.
I hope
Carl's
the singer
actually
has
in
pipes.
step 8 right now of recovery.
No, a lot of times we were, main support or something like that, and I don't like line checking through the rig when there's people in the room. So I know the first week or week and a half when we were main support for this one tour, I actually got to sound check, which was awesome. And then after that, if cans were at front of house, I would listen to it to make sure that it was clean. But really, for the most part, there were 3 or 4 bands in front of us, so I know all the channels were working. If something wasn't, the house engineer just let me know. And I knew enough how the kit sounded. He tuned his drums really well. I barely ever EQ'd the toms, just the bass and guitars went flat. The horns, a little tweak here and there. Like, once I got to know the intricacies of each input, I would just gain stage it with the channels muted and go, you know, just for the sake of time. But the other advantage of being on a tour is, even though it's not the same system and it's not the same desk every night, I had the same band engineer from the headlining band tuning the system.
Oh, yeah.
So he used Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel every day. And whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to that tour, because
I'm going to work on that one.
Yeah. Good. It's a good sounding track. And, you know, I even found, in one of the other band engineers that was on the tour, we even found on certain brands of speakers, especially, that some of the EQ stuff that the headliner would do, we didn't necessarily like. So we found ourselves even bypassing the house graph sometimes, which was, you know, risky as well. But the other engineer mixed before I did. His band played earlier, so he was kind of the guinea pig, and I would listen to his last 2 or 3 songs to see what it was like before I went up there, and you know, get the gain stage and swing at the first pitch and see what happens. And you know, 9 times out of 10 it turned out okay. But yeah, I mean, that was basically it. You know, when I have the luxury of sound check, I go through and line check everything like that and kind of get the sounds together. And then when the band starts playing a song in sound check, well, then there's no rules anymore. It's either, okay, I'm not out of gas, but if I do find myself in that situation that I am out of gas, everything goes out except for the vocals. And then with the vocals there, I bring in the drums and everything else in order, but with the vocals on top. And I don't like doing it that way just because it takes longer. I mean, that's mainly out of laziness, but to save the show, it's the thing to do.
Yeah, it's one of those, okay, ready, go.
Having mixed a lot of festival stages, I've run into that a lot, where if you're on a little bit firmer ground, like, you know, the system has been tuned up pretty well, you've maybe heard a couple other bands go on the same stuff, and if you know your band pretty well, I actually have had a couple of times where I've had to literally sound check on headphones because we weren't allowed for whatever reason to make noise, whether the headliners were being prima donnas or done a couple things inside of universities, like inside buildings, and there would be
classes,
4 stories of classrooms with windows looking out into the atrium where this concert was going to be.
How wonderful is that
you make
venue?
A peep before 5 p.m., you will be shot.
And they have security there.
Yep. So we've snuck around and done some stuff like that. But like on a festival stage, like what Karl has said, you know, the old timers will say, you know, these pickers and griners are like, well, first song's the sound check. Those are also people who don't necessarily want anything but lead vocal in their monitor. For bands that want a little bit more of that star treatment, that modern day kind of sound. You can get it done really fast if you keep your wits about you. If you know your band really well, if you know what they want really well, if you're mixing monitors as well from front of house, you can kind of anticipate their needs. Did I already say if you're paying attention to what the system sounds like? But it's, I mean, apart from doing just a real quick line check, like hit every drum 2 or 3 times, 2 bass notes, 3 guitar chords, say hey into that microphone, all right, go. I feel like I can get, with a little bit of foundation under me and ahead of me, I can get a song, like, but you know, by the time we're into the first chorus, I can have a band whipped into shape pretty well, and not too much longer than that if it's not a band that I know. If I'm just in charge of a festival stage and mixing everybody that comes along.
Yeah, 2 things on that. If it is a festival, I mean, chances are the first band of the day, they're getting some sort of check. So if you're the first band of the day, you should be fine. If you're in the middle somewhere, you gotta at least hear half of the set of the band before you. And whether the mix is good or sucks, by looking at whatever engineer is doing that, you should be able to make some assumptions on what you need to do going into your mix. Second thing was, the band that I toured with, the first song that they did was always an instrumental. And it was always, that instrumental was, you know, balls to the wall. So I knew right away I was getting everything they had, which was really good for dynamics and gain structure.
It's got to help with the sandbagging.
Right. Yeah. It definitely helps with the sandbagging. and it gave me a minute 30 of music to not worry about vocals, which was great.
Yeah.
Sandbagging, for anybody who doesn't know, I don't know how much of a nationally and internationally known term that is, but everybody here anyway, because Carl used to mix where I mix now, knows the term sandbagging, and that's when at sound check the singer or player will...
Hi, John.
Yeah, just very, very lightly check their instrument, and then when it's go time, they're suddenly 5 times louder. So that's sandbagging.
Right. The trumpet player I worked with, I had to check him 6 dB down. His sound check, his point was -6, and then he'd be right at 0 for set time, which took me about a week to figure out after he kept burning me. But,
I think the most tricky about, like, with live instruments, that's one thing. Well, it's a live instrument, but the amps that go to half power or quarter power, someone goes and flips the switch to full power. So instead of 25 watts, you're at 50 or 100.
That's a dirty old trick, especially in a smaller club.
Right, I was just going to say that.
A half stack can easily walk away from whatever inadequate system is
someone did that to me at Mohawk Place, and I didn't know I was... I was playing for somebody before Reign of Kindo. I think you were actually mixing that show. And I think someone went to go and toggle the ground switch that I had on it. It wasn't the ground switch though. It was the half power switch. So instead of the 50 watts that I was running that amp, it turned into 100. And I'm pretty sure you yelled at me after, or somebody yelled at me. They're like, "What happened? You got twice as loud." And
that might have been Renee and RIP the Mohawk Place.
Yeah.
They finally got under?
It's their last hurrah this weekend, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So hopefully Renee finds another job soon.
Yeah. Anything else? Bueller?
Yeah, there's always those great people that show up and they're really sick or just have no oomph behind them at all as far as vocalists go. It's like, what do you do to get that through the mix when the drums are still right behind the lead singer?
Oh, like a Chris Hoisington. There's a whole cult following of his sound check.
Have you got him
methods.
to sound check right yet?
Nah.
I'm just wondering, like, it's...
didn't tell him to show up anymore.
That's right, he didn't...
I was like, once you've mixed for him a couple of times, like, this cat will step up to sound check the mic, and he'll play his guitar, a third as loud as he's gonna play it, and just kind of hum something else that he was thinking about. So, and he sounds kind of like the dude from Counting Crows, like really expressive but weird.
You just as long as you start out cutting 180.
Yeah, he's gonna eat the mic.
Anything after that is okay.
Stupid me. I mean, I mixed him for 5 years. I know how he is, and I'm just starting now to remember that when I'm checking my ears, that during sound check, if I can barely hear him in my ears, it's still going to be too loud for the show.
Because he's going to blow the chrome right off the mic.
And his brother's the same way, and it's just, we just got to get used to it. But.
All right. I kind of ran out of steam on that.
People that just don't show up for sound check, like that's one of the finer points of working at a church. Like, I don't know if it happens as much here. No. In mine, it happens all the time.
It happens here. Yeah. You don't play much more.
Yeah, we tried that. It doesn't work. It's an AG thing. They just don't care, I guess.
Oh, yes, the assemblies.
Yeah, no one shows up. You're like, for sound check, there's no vocal ensemble.
No one shows up?
Yeah, nice. Like the band's there.
Like
maybe down like a guitar player, but there's no background vocals. For service, there's 8.
Are they all on their own mics?
No, God. They're not even on. I don't think I plugged them into the wall. But they're still like, the way the stage is set up now, because there's still a friggin' Christmas tree up, they're right behind the 4 people that have handhelds, like the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass section leaders or whatever. So if any of those people sing really quiet, they just, the ensemble goes right into their handhelds. Like, I don't know how you
get up in the morning. Honestly. I don't know how you get out of bed in the morning.
I just deployed a system for a church, and as part of the deal, I went for a Sunday service, and thank God I was there because their sound person, who's really cool and fun to work with, but didn't show up until 5 minutes after service started.
Right.
So
yeah, that kind of stuff.
But yeah. So what? So I'm asking, so what's going to happen in service today? Oh, we're going to do songs, whatever. And okay. So the ensemble of like 8 dudes gets up. They put 2 wireless 58s in front of them, pointed at the ceiling. And then the organ player who's behind him, who has a Leslie right next to him, is yelling at me because he can't hear him. And I'm like, well, the median age of this group of guys was 68. They didn't have much gas to begin with. And then, well, here, right now the microphone's pointed at the source, and right now the microphone's pointed at the ceiling. So just, and then move the microphone
with
4
the Leslie
feet away.
behind it doesn't help at all.
I mean, it's just,
you can hear lots of that, I'm sure.
Funny. Oh, we could lament for days, I'm sure.
I'm getting to C3 this week.
Yeah, I remember one professor that wore a lav down by his belly button. For all you people listening down here, that kind of sounds like this.
Yeah, you're getting the same amount of Gordon on the other 3 mics in the room as he's actually talking into. I have that phenomenon here. A couple of my pastors are belly button holders, and they know it, too. Like, they'll joke about it at sound check. They're like, I know, John, I know. I'll try and hold it up this time. Sure enough, service starts, and the mic's down here by the belly. Like, they're talking really loud, so, like, I can at least get something. Like, their voice going out of the room is helping a little bit, too.
You just need to... Yeah. All right, here's a product idea. Some sort of balm for microphones that tastes good.
Slightly addictive.
Right. If there's a little bit of crack in there, I'm not going to complain.
You have to know your pastor, because sometimes it needs to smell like a nice meal, and then other times it needs to smell like gin.
But I used to, just wash the mics off with mint Listerine, and nobody was afraid to get personal with that,
I told the guys at church, I was like, after service, just go out, like, buy some Listerine. And it's a good idea. Clean them off with, like, the antiseptic kind, like the mint kind.
Yeah.
And it kills the germs, and they don't smell like rotting food and all that stuff.
Right.
He went out and bought the old school, like the
yellow.
No. They smell terrible.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it for 6 months. So I can't get the smell out of him now.
That's like you're singing into an armpit.
It's not any better than they were before. It's just a different kind of
medicinal mouthwash. That's awesome.
Yeah. Just a little bit of mint on there. They're going to want more of that.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to bring up a couple non-traditional methods, and we've talked about one here before where we sort of covered it a little bit, where you start with vocals, and then you relate the vocals to the kick, and then the kick to the bass and the snare, and then you have the guitars in and the keys and whatever, and then you build your mix sort of, not really from most important to least important, but kinda. You go with your heaviest hitters, like the stuff that's going to burn up the most headroom in the system, and you kind of get those all sitting nice together, and then you fill in. One really nice method is where, and I've only had this happen maybe 4 or 5 times in 20 years, but a band will say, all right, go ahead, line check everything, get our monitors set, but don't worry about the house. We got a sound check song. And the first time I saw it was a gospel act, and they did it just like that. Like the lead player, it's like, all right, man, I'll walk you through this. I know their names. I'll help you out. All right, we got Danny on drums. Danny, give him something. So like, boom, go through the whole kit. All right, we got Jimmy on bass. Give him something, Jimmy. And, so I'm, over the course of 3-4 minutes, I'm getting to know the band a little bit, and they, hear all their inputs. Like, all right, Jimmy's good. Put a little Jimmy in this monitor, put a little Jimmy in that monitor, and it was really nice because I feel like, these people are investing in me, and I know their names now, and not just another faceless group of people on my stage. They get to the end of it, and they go, all right, we're pretty sure everybody's monitors are good. We're just going to do this. We got 3 minutes for you, and you get it good in the house, all right? So they start, and he starts singing, crooning, laying it down, and then the bass player starts riffing along with him. Little kick and snare hat comes filing in after that. Big Tom Phil and the Leslie organ sound comes in. Guitar player, like boom, and just perfectly timed. Like I got 2 bars of every input before another input came along. boom, 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 boom. After, 32 bars, I had the whole band up. They played 8 more bars, and it was done. It didn't take 2 minutes, and they were the best sounding act I had.
Honestly,
72 acts in a weekend-long thing.
Yeah, that is something any band that I've actually gotten to have a long-term relationship with, I've always tried to encourage them to do that. It's like, why show up to a bar or whatever and go, okay, yeah, we're going to play this one for sound check, and then we'll be starting in like half an hour or whatever. It's like, just create a little jam, draw people in, if you got to go right on, well, guess what? So you did a little jam session.
Yep.
You only got one instrument that sounds a little off that got fixed.
These gospel cats, other people have done this for me, but they were still my favorite because the background singers would come in and start directing things a little bit, like, in 4 parts, four black people with huge voices, like in 4 parts, just singing like, Jimmy, give us something on the bass, like you get the little bass solo break, and like now the drum, and now the whole kit, like. It was freaking awesome. I wish I had recorded that show because you could teach a class based on this sound check. What were you going to say, Anth?
Oh, I was going to say, did you pay attention to how more, for lack of better terms, ethnic your voice got as you went through the sound check in your brain?
Oh boy.
Just like you got more and more gospel. It was awesome.
I was remembering what
snapped clean out of it and went right back into engineer brain.
Yeah. I was remembering how those people spoke to me.
No, it's not bad. It was just kind of funny.
It's like I was there, man.
Sweet. But relevant that Carl and I have both mixed. I've actually mixed mostly monitors for that group. They started doing after a while where instead of trying to deal with playing your instrument and raising your hand and this and that, like, all right, you do one input and you get it set in that guy's ears, and then you get it set in everybody else's ears, and then all 15 people need to play their instruments to make sure that they're going to still hear that input along with their input in their ears. So they finally just got sick of it because sound checks, 90 minutes wasn't out of the question to sound check this band.
It was awful.
Well, when they were headlining, they owned the place.
You needed 2 coffees to get yourself through.
But then it would still take...
That's why we played alone for so many years.
They would play a festival stage, and it would still take 45 minutes. Like, we really pissed off Skillet one year.
We have to be on first in the morning because that gave us an extra 2 hours before we actually started playing to get all that crap sorted out.
They would actually be loading on a stage. Like, Roman would still be asleep in the campground, sleeping it off. The stage roof wouldn't be up. Like, they would be crawling around under the canopy, loading their gear on stage, so that the second the system was powered up, they could start banging on stuff.
Someone had to go and dig Roman out of a gutter somewhere.
But they would do that same thing where, like, Anthony would talk. We'd get through the drums, and he would say, all right, Peter, man, just groove. So we'd get a drum groove with some fills now and then. Like, you'd do a fill every 4 measures, indefinitely. Bass would start up, we get the bass set in everybody's ears, and he'd just keep riffing. Add the guitars, add the keys, so then you don't have this, like, okay, I think that's good, but is it still going to be good when everybody else is playing? And that cut the sound check down to about 50 minutes.
Right.
We're not exaggerating.
We're still doing that now, and we've slimmed down a lot, too. So
there's fewer people in the band. This is when they were...
We fit into, I think this might have been a record for Paulie, since he's been doing a house for us. I think we fit into 12 inputs.
Come on.
Whoa. Yeah.
I've done gigs for you guys where that wasn't all the drums.
I know.
I'm trying to figure out what you left out.
I was looking at the snake, and I'm like, we had an opening act. I'm like, Paul, do we have enough inputs? He's like, yeah, we have like 14 enough extra inputs. Which was, cool, but I mean, we didn't stereo my guitar rig. I was the only guitar player. I mean, we slimmed down a lot.
This is a band that used to be, they had interchangeable players, so it'd be like one drummer and then, 1 out of 3 possible percussionists would show up. 2 out of 4 possible keyboard players would show up. 2 to 3 out of 5 possible electric players would show up. On 3 to 5 out of 18 possible backup vocalists would show up, and then the brothers, so there would be. I'm remembering the couple of gigs we did at the show place where there would be, drums, percussion, keys, electric, acoustic, backup singer, 2 guitars singing backups, 2 guys singing leads. So
for that show at the ballroom when we
28?
we brought in it was 40.
Really?
Like we maxed out your desk. I remember that, and us having to figure out what we were cutting. Like we had already done 1 mic per guitar cab, mono keys, but they were like
we had to get a gospel act with 10 vocals in for the opener.
Yeah, those crazy, those guys. Yeah, But yeah, like 40.
It's gonna
like,
make me relapse, man.
Maxed out the console, and we still had like 3 or 4 things to put on.
That was also the night. I forget. I don't know if I've told this story on the blog before, but these cats show up on CPT, on Colored People Time. So like, house is open. They start rolling in for the sound check, and you know, the real simple band. They were going to play our kit, 2 keyboard players, bass player, 10 vocalists, lead singer, and that's all.
So that's where we strapped a 609
It was, because the guy shows up with his
yeah.
keyboard, and he's like, you know, I plug it in, nothing. And we had already been having, like, I just wasn't on the same wavelength as the house cat, and so we were, like, just missing on patch. And then finally, we tried it on something else, and we're like, dude, it's your keyboard. He's like, no way, man, it worked this afternoon. It worked in rehearsal. And I'm like, it doesn't work now, and it was not his problem. Like this $89 Casio, it was a keyboard that like had speakers in it, really cool ones with like rivets or bullets or something around the outside of them. Like
sounds like a show I took over for you for a few years. Have a great piano all weekend, then Sunday morning for service. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Was that buried in your closet under 10 feet of water?
So yeah, we eventually just got to the point where like it's 10 minutes past go time. There's 1,000 people waiting. And we haven't even gotten started on sound check because we don't have an input from the lead keyboard player. So me and the house guy are just standing there sweating. I think you came down from front of house, if I remember correctly.
I was
catering. John came.
I was out there. I had to run around and find you.
It was me and John on stage,
it.
and who's the other cat? He's the house manager out there. Neil came down and bulldogged me. And I'm just like, so he's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I took 3 breaths, and I was like. I grabbed John by the shirt. And I shoved him over towards your mic box. I was like, get in that blue box, pull out the whatever's in there. But the best thing that you can lay your hands on, get it over here. Get a cable, get tape. He came back with a 609. We taped that sucker to the speaker of that Casio. 2 minutes later, the show was underway.
Didn't half of one of the patch boxes on the side, like the split didn't work right? There was something where I remember, the power on one half of the stage wasn't working right. And I think you had to go in and rewire some stuff, which
I always rewire stuff when I could have.
Yeah. All I can say is I really am starting to hate GFCIs the more I run into them.
That was one hell of a show.
That was a really good show. Once we finally got it off the ground. Well, and then they forgot to start. Like, we got these guys sound checked at 7:15, and the show was like...
The dude disappeared.
Really supposed to start, and the guy goes off stage to get dressed.
He's like, walking around upstairs.
Well, we forgot to tell him to go. Like, our organization all got in positions. Like, Carl's at front of house, I'm at the side stage. Everybody's like, all right, you have the con. We're ready. DEF CON 0, let's go. And the show just did not start, and nobody said anything. So, like, 5-10 more minutes go by, and he's like, Oh, you ready to start? All right.
and then there was like a 15 or 20 minute like instrumental before he started singing, or it was just him screaming or something like that. It was.
He did go into like dolphin speak for a while at the high point of the show.
It was amazing. That I remember as soon as it was done, we finally got. I think that's the only time I've ever seen Carl smoke. Like, we got outside, he's like, give me a drag. I need a drag of that.
Yeah,
and that was
I hadn't smoked for a couple of years at that point, but after that show.
Hats off to you, though, because you did only take 2 drags, and to my knowledge, he has not smoked since.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
All right, well, we're reaching about a good point to wrap it up, approaching the hour mark. So, thanks to all who tuned in. Hope you found it somewhat educational. Once again, the idea is not to write the book on anything or give out point-by-point instructions, just to kind of jawbone about the stuff that we do, and hopefully it was educational to you. So tune back in next week. We'll have some other boring rot to drone on about.
Rot and dribble.
Stuff to wail
maybe
about.
I'll do a mini podcast on that Elvis song I'm doing.
Oh, please do, because I'm not going to make it down to your place this week to hear it.
It's coming in to sing on Tuesday. I'm terrified.
What?
Oh, is this
there's with who?
This guy TCT is doing a movie, and yeah, that's about it right there. But they sent me these 2 tracks last week, and they're like, "We need these." Like, okay, and listening to them, like, we're doing like one song from an I'll Fly Away from the Oh Brother Where Art Thou version of that song, and then Only Believe by Elvis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds special. Can I share briefly? It doesn't even have to make the cut.
Everything makes the cut.
My TCT nightmare gig. This was, man, I don't know, 12 years ago. I was playing guitar in a band, and TCT was doing a pilot for this show, and we were going to be like the house band, and we were really energetic and jumped around and stuff like that. And, you know, the producer was like, all right, you know, don't worry about making mistakes. Like, you know, we can just, you know, refilm it. Like, not a big deal. So we start playing the song, and it kicks in, and we're all supposed to jump and play. Well, it was before I started using strap locks on my guitars. And I jump, and the strap goes somewhere else. So I'm holding the guitar, like, right at the nut with my left hand. And, you know, the guitar's feeding back. I mean, it's just this whole thing. So I'm like, all right, well, we're just going to stop and start again because it's only been like 20 seconds.
Live to tape?
Right.
Live,
the producer's like, keep going, you're fine. Keep going. And I'm just standing there like, what do you mean I'm fine? Keep going. This is a train wreck. Let's start again. And that's about it for my experience.
I did TV shows over there for the first year and a half of me working at the Tab, and they don't shoot like a normal TV show. Like, they shoot a half-hour show with like breaks, but they do it live to tape. So you just sit there for 7 minutes.
I did a couple of those before, yeah.
They're friggin' awful.
Yeah.
Especially when they mess up right after, like, oh, we got to redo right from the beginning. Like, why? Why can't you? There's a wheel there for that to sort that out. Well, let's redo it. 5 shows took 10 hours.
So they don't have Avid over there, huh?
The what?
Sounds like they're working on Betamax.
They've got the beta tapes. Yeah, no, it's an Allen and Heath something.
No, I mean film-wise. That's why they do that, so they don't have to edit anything. You can do everything in 7-minute chunks.
No, it's my staff video is just lazy. That's all it is.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Was it lazy, though, because he was working on videotape and not digital video? Or?
No. Just lazy.
Story of our lives. All right. Well, this is us wrapping it up. We got Karl Maciag, Gordon Wood, Anth Kosobucki.
Yeah.
And you're...
I got nothing.
I'm still really bad. You would think 30 episodes into this I'd be better at signing off, but I pretty much stumble and bumble every single time. I don't know, maybe that's part of the charm. Let us know. Send your cards and letters, too. It is okay, by the way, to get in touch. We're on Facebook. We do read that stuff. We're on Twitter. I don't read that stuff. I think Anthony